Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 49ers After Dark. We're your hosts, Grant Cohn, Jessie Naylor. Free agency starts next week, the legal tampering period where teams and players can start negotiating contracts as if that's when they started. Is 5 days from now. And then free agency starts 7 days from now. So we're going to talk about the tough decisions the 49ers have to make. In fact, we're going to make them for them. That's what we have that kind of power. Jesse, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And yeah, we've been tasked with all the tough decisions. I mean, what kind of quality control would we be if there was no tough decisions being made in the offseason? We got to keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, Kyle called us up and he was like, guys, I don't like making decisions or firing people, so you tell me who to get rid of. And we were like, we got you, Kyle. No problem.
Got you.
So let's get right into it. Keep or cut Kyle Juszczyk.
I think they've got to cut Kyle Juszczyk. Here's a situation the 49ers are in, and you can go to Over the Cap or you can go to Spot Rack. I went to Spot Rack. Either one is fine, but going there, the 49ers are about $3.5 million over the cap. Their rookie class is going to cost them roughly $11 million. Well, a lot of people talk about getting rid of guys like Armstead. Well, if you do that, that only saves you $2.5 million. You can move on from Deebo Samuel, trade him. That's only going to save you $6.9 million. Kyle Juszczyk, if you cut him, saves you $4.9 million. He's set to make $7.6 million this year. And when you look at his production, of course, it goes beyond numbers because he's a fullback, but he averages 1 touch a game throughout the season. He had 10 of his 17 games. He was on the field for 45% or less of the offensive snaps. And when you look at what he is set to do, which is block and be a fullback, he was actually only on the field 52% of the runs this year, Grant, which tells me that they ran the ball just fine without Kyle Juszczyk. For me, I can't see how the 49ers justify $7.6 million for a player that is on the field 52% of the time on run blocking downs, which is what he is brought in to do. When there's players out there like Michael Burton, who have made $7.6 million in their whole career, which is what Juszczyk is set to make this year. And if you look at his production for the Broncos last year, also a free agent, if they wanted to go get him, was almost identical to Juszczyk's. So for me, I think this one's the biggest no-brainer out of all of these. Absolutely free up the money, save the $4.9 million, move on from Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guaranteed money left in his contract. He's been getting not phased out of the offense, but his role has been getting diminished. And he's not as good of a player as he used to be. When he first came to the Niners, I thought he was a phenomenal blocker and a really underrated receiver. And I used to always talk about Kyle not giving him the ball enough. I think those days are over. I think he gets the ball just enough and maybe a little too much. At his age, I don't think he's really giving you much as a blocker anymore. I think, again, he's a decoy. He goes in motion. You know what I mean? It just seems like what JT O'Sullivan said about him is dead on. He's the coach's friend. And the coach sort of shows his creativity, I guess, or some of his, I don't even know what you want to call it, expresses himself through these weird plays with the fullback where he doesn't get the ball. But that's about it at this point. I think you got to cut him. But I don't think they will.
Well, and I take PFF with a grain of salt. I mean, it's just another data point. I like some of their advanced analytics as far as their statistics that they put out there, not necessarily their scoring, their rankings that they do, because I feel like it can be biased in some ways. But if you're looking at what PFF says, as far as his career goes, this was middle tier year for him as far as his run blocking went. So not only is he not on the field 48% of the runs, not only was he on the field less than 45% of the time in 10 of the 17 games, period, but as far as his run blocking, it was middle of the road for his career this last year. Is that going to improve? Is he 32, 33? I don't know that that's going to improve. And I mean, when they drafted Willis, I thought that was an option. Obviously, they can always bring in an undrafted guy this year. There's not a lot of fullbacks drafted. Or like I said, they can go out and get a guy like Michael Burton, who has made $7.6 million for his career. And at this stage in his career is about as productive as Juszczyk is. So for me, I don't see the point of bringing back Kyle Juszczyk. Although, what do we think's going to happen? I would be shocked if they cut him. I would.
I think one of the issues with Juszczyk is he's like finally not one of the top 5 weapons on this offense.
Mm.
Jennings has taken his spot. Jennings is just more dangerous, valuable than Kyle Juszczyk. Much better receiver. Still improving as a receiver, a lot younger. And he's not a fullback, but he's a devastating blocker. And when you put him in the game in 3 wide receiver personnel packages, he's really, really effective. So it seems like if you're getting your best players on the field, you have to have more and more time for Jennings, less and less time for Juszczyk. There's still a place for Juszczyk, but should he really be making more money than Juwan Jennings at this point in their careers? No. And he is, and that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's a lot of money. And that's the crazy part. Again, when we talk about cutting players or trading players or what have you, I mean, if you save more money, double the money, getting rid of him versus Eric Armstead, who you would take a $26 million cap hit on, I mean, you got to free up money somehow. You can't extend all these guys. You can't rework all these contracts. You're going to put yourself in a really bad situation cap-wise. So for me, yeah, this is like one of the easiest decisions on this roster, in my opinion.
Agree. I mean, there's 2 years left on his deal, but there's no guaranteed money left on his deal. So they structure it in such a way that if he was declining or they needed cap space, this would be the time to cut him. And I still don't think they will, because I think with the certain players on this team, Jed York, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch are a little sentimental, where Bill Walsh, George Seifert, Eddie DeBartolo were not. I think there's a little bit of a difference there. And when JT O'Sullivan calls Juszczyk the coach's friend, there is something to that. So if I had to bet, I'm saying Juszczyk's going to be on this team.
Yeah, I would too. You know, I do want to say this, though, about Kyle, because this is really the first time that we've seen Kyle in this situation. And I think the assumption is pretty much what you said, like, hey, you know, some of these guys he probably treats as his friend. But one thing we haven't seen is that Kyle has now a group of aging players that are making a lot of money that decisions have to be made on over the next 12 months. I'm curious to see how cutthroat he really is. You know, he signed a lot of these guys when they were younger and up and coming still and at the peak of their career. But now that they're making a lot of money, maybe more money than what they should at this stage, I'm curious to see how he handles it. He might be more cutthroat than what we think. And I think Juszczyk is going to give us a good indication of that. If he keeps him around, then probably what you're saying is right. But if he gets rid of him, it's like, oh, okay. He's all about his business. So
Juszczyk seems just like one of the crew. Like, he's not a backup dancer on this team. He's got a nickname. He's part of the. He's on the.
Is he like the movie? Is he Lance Bass?
Yes.
An NSYNC.
Yes, he's in the group. And I think cutting him would be. I just don't see him doing it. If they do, I'll give him endless respect for sure. Couple super chats. Dave Barclay says Grant has made the greatest content creator tree. Well, thank you, but they're the true MVPs because they're phenomenal.
Like Kevin Durant, you're the real MVP.
You're the real MVP. Cleslin Perio says, "What up, fellas? If Deebo happens to get traded and we keep Jennings, how you feel with BA number 1 and Jennings number 2? Keep killing it, both of you."
I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I don't know that Jennings is a true number 2 receiver either, but I don't know.
I'll give him a shot. Draft another wide receiver as well.
Deebo is actually, I think, the hardest decision to make on this team. And I know we're going to talk about him in a minute, so I won't give away too much, but I do think he's the toughest decision out of all these guys on this team.
That's a pretty good segue. Should the 49ers trade or restructure Deebo Samuel?
Okay, so here's the situation with Deebo Samuel. His contract is set to expire 2026, which I love that flexibility. And that's what makes this really tough. However, if you restructure him, you save $15 million. That's a lot of money that they could use this year. If you trade him, you're going to take a cap hit of $21.7 million. and you're going to save 6.9 million. Now that 6.9 million is significant, but also saving all that money next year with him not on the roster is also significant. I mean, I really could see a scenario where all three are a good choice. Either let him write out his contract, restructure him, or trade him. For me, if I had my preference, I would trade him because I would love to save that full dollar amount next year with him not on the roster. The 6.9 million you save this year is still crucial to going out and getting another player in free agency. It more than covers whoever you would draft for that third round pick or whatever you're going to get for him. And the 15.1 million is enticing if I restructure him. But what's not enticing is making sure that he's locked in no matter what on your team through 2026. And when you look at Deebo Samuel over the last 2 seasons since he signed his contract, compared to the season that he had before, which was, we all agree, phenomenal season, was probably never repeatable. Understand that. But the last 2 seasons combined, he's had just 280 more yards than he had in that one season and only 3 more touchdowns. He's been injured both those seasons. I know people like to talk about, well, without him last year, they were 0-2. But a big part of that was Trent Williams was also out. The year before, they were 4-0 without him. I don't know what his value is or how much it is at this point. I know that he's important. I'm not saying he can't take over games. I just feel like it's few and far between. And if your data point that you're pulling for importance is games that Trent Williams also missed, I have a hard time leaning towards Deebo Samuel being the reason that they lost those games over Trent Williams. So I would personally trade him.
Yeah. I mean, I could understand people saying, you know what, not this year. You don't save that much money. He's 2 years left on his deal. He's only 28. Trade him next year. Save more money. Get 1 more year of his prime. I get that, but to me, Deebo Samuel's declining. I don't know if everyone would agree with that, but I don't think I think his route running is getting worse. His ability to separate is getting worse. I think his durability is getting worse. So I would trade him now as well and bank on whatever they could get for him being, like, say it's a draft pick, being a full round or 2 higher than what they could get for him next year.
And by the way, if they make this move next year, they only save 2.2 million more than they do this year. So it's not a significant amount.
Good point.
And again, you're saving that full cap hit next year. So really you're saving way more money next year if you make the move this year. And that's really what I'm looking at. It's like, I think they can stay competitive without him. I think that frees up enough money to help them this year go get an impact player at another position, and also frees up 28 million next year. That's a lot of money to free up for next season. So I would make the move now. If there's something out there, I would do it.
To me, they paid Deebo what they paid him because they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. He was the offense. They gave him so many touches in 2021, and now they can't anymore. They can't justify paying him $28 million a year. He's redundant. 11 targets and however many carries in the Super Bowl is way too much. But as long as he's making that much money, you have to give him the ball that much at the expense of players who are better than him at this point. I think the team gets better without him. You could trade him while he still has a lot of value for a player at another position or the same position, whatever. Get a younger, cheaper player with a whole future ahead of him and still have the best group of weapons in football.
Yeah.
You still have the best group of weapons in football. Sorry, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, let's say you get a 3rd round pick for him. You package that 3rd round pick with maybe a compensatory 3rd in your 2nd and move on up. You can go get a receiver.
Yep.
I don't know. The way that Brock Purdy plays, to me, has just kind of gone past the training wheel part of Deebo Samuel and what he brought for guys like Jimmy Garoppolo. he needs guys that can get open and one-on-one. Where Brock's going to struggle in the future is tight man-to-man press coverage, because that's
Right.
where you have to throw receivers open. That's where arm strength does become an actual thing, especially when you have a team that can get to you with 4. And that's what we saw him struggle with this year. So you need receivers that can beat man coverage. Now, you can put on the game in the Super Bowl, and you can see that Brandon Aiyuk was open quite a bit. But if he wasn't number 1 or 2 on those progressions, it's really hard to get him the ball. So if you can get another guy that can beat man coverage instead of somebody who can't, like Deebo, I think Brock Purdy really benefits from that. And it doesn't have to be a superstar. It could just be a guy that can beat number 2 corners consistently.
Mhm.
And his superpower basically is route running. If he does anything great, let him be a really good route runner and good enough to beat number 2 corners. That is actually not easy to find, but I think it's easier to find than trying to just outright replace Deebo with another guy like Deebo. It doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah, trade him to an AFC team that gets a lot of zone coverage. Like I would imagine, I mean, I don't know the numbers. I would imagine the Ravens face a lot of zone coverage because Lamar Jackson's so dangerous and you want to have a lot of eyes on him. Trade him to Baltimore. Trade him to Buffalo. Those teams could use him. But the Niners, I'm with you.
Colts
Juwan
with Anthony
Jennings.
Richardson.
Yep. Those guys are man coverage beaters. Get another one. That's what they need. That's what Brock Purdy needs for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I would do it.
But will the Niners? No,
Absolutely not.
He's not going anywhere. They're going to restructure his contract and keep him around for even longer.
That's what I fear. That's what because here's what I'm looking at. So the guys that make sense to restructure for sure. Fred Warner, he's young enough to where you can do it. His contract expires in 2027. I'm fine with pushing that out to 2028. That gives him 10.7 million. All right. You've got Trevarius Ward again. His contract expires in 2026. I think he's young enough that you could push that to 2027. That's going to give them 9 million. Now, whether they trade Aiyuk or they extend Aiyuk, they're saving a lot of money there. And they're going to have to choose out of Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Eric Armstead, George Kittle, Javon Hargrave. Which one of these guys do they restructure? And I think Deebo makes the most sense. It's the most amount of money they get back. He's the youngest of that group. I just think keeping him for sure through 2026 is a mistake that they will regret in 2025 and probably 2026.
I mean, if they regret anything, they probably should regret the extension to begin with. But it seems like, given how much they called Deebo Samuel's number in the Super Bowl, they must still think he's really good. And I don't know how they reconcile with the fact that he was utterly shut down in that game. But they must still think he's good. And as long as Kyle Shanahan's the coach, I think Deebo Samuel's going to be here. Because again, the 2 players we've talked about so far, it's like all these reasons to move on. And the reason he's going to stay, friends with the coach.
I mean, the thing about Deebo is it's not him and Juszczyk both. Neither of these guys are bad football players, but these are the tough decisions that you have to make. Look at all the great. This is what people need to realize. And we get, as fans, I say we because I'm a fan, we get attached to players. And the reality of the situation is most players that are drafted, especially in the salary cap era, by their teams, do not stick with those teams until the end of their careers. They move on. There's going to be a point where you're going to have to make a decision on George Kittle in 2 years. He's probably still going to want to play football, and the 49ers are not going to want to pay him, and he'll be gone anyways. And he'll finish his career 1 or 2 years in Chicago or somewhere obscure. You're going to do the same thing with Eric Armstead, who after next year, assuming you don't restructure him, I doubt they want to bring him back. He's probably going to want to play another year or 2. That's just the nature of football. That's the business that we're in. So don't get attached to these guys. Understand that everybody's movable. Everything is about the business. They're not going to retire in a Niner uniform anyways. You have to move on before it's too late. And if you wait too long, people aren't going to trade for these players and you're not going to save the money. It's just not going to make sense. You only get really one chance at this for all these players. There's a pivotal year for all of them. A guy like Deebo Samuel, I think this is his pivotal year. I think Eric Armstead, this is his pivotal year. Kyle Juszczyk. Next year, I think it's Kittle, so forth and so on. So,
yeah, a pivotal year, a year to stand on business. That's my new favorite phrase.
On business. I like that.
Standing on business. Not exactly sure what it means, but I think I do. And I want to use it all the time.
It's like a jump to conclusions map. It's a mat with a bunch of conclusions on it that you can jump to.
People younger than 30 like, what? I don't get it. Dreams24 says trade Deebo for a true wide receiver. Or a player on a rookie deal. Player 8 years younger.
Yeah.
Or 6. Austin Cross. Who gets fired from their current team first? Shanahan or Harbaugh?
I think Harbaugh retires first.
Yeah, neither one's going to get fired.
Yeah, I don't think
They're
so.
not going to get fired. One day, maybe the Yorks will ask Kyle Shanahan politely to coach another team, but maybe not until then. Hey, Kyle, we might kind of want to go a different direction if that's okay with you. If not, well, hey, up to you. They don't have the same hunger like the Chiefs.
I don't know. I mean, I
Hunger
just
factor.
don't know that they know how to win like the Chiefs.
It's hunger. Dazza says, what's the point drafting players and not playing them? How many players of our last 3 years of drafts have been impactful? Hopefully this draft we move up and get studs instead of using all 11 picks. Here.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers do this thing, the red shirt thing, which it's been fine up until this point, but because some of these players are aging and because the depth is starting to disappear naturally because you're paying a lot of high-end contracts, you're going to have to pivot from that, and you're going to have to start playing and relying on some of these young players once again because the depth isn't there for you to just redshirt these guys going forward.
Cles Limperio says, can you trade him after restructure?
You can, but the dead cap is going to go up even more and the savings won't be there. So, yeah.
Right, because what you're doing is converting base salary to signing bonus?
Yeah, you can trade him. You can trade him, but you're going to have to wait another year to do it again, basically.
Cosmo says letting go BA is letting go the only legit wide receiver they have. Deebo is a running back. Also, time to part ways with Juszczyk and Armstead. Get younger and faster. Old Man Rock says, didn't they have unused cap space from this year?
Yeah, and that's added in. That's factored in. They actually get to go over the cap around $37 million, and they're still over that. So there you go.
Okay, well, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. We're going to take a minute for our sponsors, the Sleeper app, which is a new app. You guys all need to download it. It's terrific for these daily fantasy picks. And again, I'm giving away a signed Brandon Aiyuk jersey. I already gave away one. I'm giving away a white one. And it's the off season, so there's only been like 20 entrants so far. If you want it, download the app, make a deposit using code Cohn, COHN, and you'll be like one of 25 people entered to win a signed Brandon Aiyuk jersey, which could be a collector's item in about a week when the Niners trade him. Just kidding.
So hold on. Let me get this straight. I download the app. I put in $10.
$10.
And I have a chance to win a jersey.
That's it.
1 in 25 chance, roughly.
That's right.
1 in 30, 1 in 40.
Highly recommend you do this. And you got the QR code there, the promo code there. $10. And you're in for a jersey. So let's show you how the app works. This is a Warrior game tonight, Jesse, for the good people watching in the Bay Area. They're playing the Bucks. So let's start with
this.
Lillard.
Let's do it.
Lillard. What do you like for Lillard?
More. 25.5 points.
No hesitation?
No hesitation.
Curry.
More. 27.5 points.
Okay. Giannis. Double, points, rebounds, and assists.
Hold on. Double?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like if he gets a double.
Yeah. Yes.
You win.
Give me more. Yeah. Yes.
Draymond.
Points, rebounds, and assists. Give me assists and rebounds over 12.5. Give me more.
I like that. It's smart to take the points out for Draymond. That's savvy. This is a guy who plays sleeper all the time. No, you don't because you're in Florida. But if you could,
then I would.
Kuminga. We got 16.5 points, 5.5 rebounds. Not a big rebound guy.
No, he's not. Give me the points and rebounds less.
Ooh, fading Kuminga. I like it. Brook Lopez. I like Brook Lopez, man. That guy, he's like my age and he can still play.
Yeah, and his brother
about threes, 1.5. And this is what he did in the last 5 games.
He's
One of
gonna
the things I
shoot
like
like
about this
4 a
Sleeper app,
game.
if you don't really know what they've done recently, boom, he had 4 threes 2 games ago.
Yeah.
Brook
Yeah,
Lopez.
He's gonna shoot 4 to 6 a game. That's the tough thing. It's just a matter of if he's hitting.
You know you want it. You know you want it. Betting against Brook Lopez? Wow.
I know. It's pretty.
You want to bet against him.
I'll go more.
What do you have against Brook?
I just said more.
Okay, last one. Clay. Threes.
Give me less. 3. I feel like 3 is a good spot. I'll go 3 exactly.
I like it. Let's lock it in. View entry. $10. That's it. Add money. Wait. I guess I'm out of money.
Ooh, $10 for 250.
Am I out of money? I guess I'll have to talk to people about that. But if I had money, I'd be betting it on this right now. Go use the promo code. All right. Boom. Hold on. Get that thing out of there. Okay. Back to football. Should the Niners trade or extend Brandon Aiyuk?
So Brandon Aiyuk is the easiest tradable player on the whole roster for a couple reasons. He's the easiest to be traded by the 49ers from the standpoint that the $14.1 million he makes this year is fully guaranteed 5th-year option, which means it goes to the new team. So they have a 0 cap hit if they trade him. Also, you're going to get a 1st-round pick for him. You look at a team like the Texans that has Cleveland's #1 pick this year. I think it's like 21. That's about what you're going to get for Brandon Aiyuk. And that team makes a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk. So I think from that standpoint, it's much easier to trade Brandon Aiyuk. It's much easier to swallow trading him because you're going to get more for him and you're not going to take a cap hit. However, with this offseason strategy that we've talked about, we're already getting rid of Deebo Samuel. Absolutely not getting rid of Brandon Aiyuk. Extending him is still going to save about $10.4 million this year against the cap, which is very significant. And you've got your #1 weapon for the future to grow with Brock Purdy. He's the perfect weapon in the sense that he is a route runner. He does get open against man. That's exactly what Brock needs. Absolutely extend Brandon Aiyuk. Give him his 27 million he wants. Save the 10.4 this year. Keep him around for the long term. We'll be good to go.
I think this is a no-brainer. And the other two we talked, Juszczyk and Deebo, we made the argument why we would move on and both agreed that the Niners probably won't. This one, I think, is just they're going to keep Brandon Aiyuk. If something goes wrong and Brandon Aiyuk's not on this team, it would be devastating and it would be a big mistake. And I think it would be bad for the locker room. Deebo Samuel came out and told Kay Adams, like, don't worry about it. He's coming back. It would just be, it's not the time to trade Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe you give him an extension. It could be a 3-year extension, a 4-year extension. And when he's 28 or 29, trade him then. But now at 25, when he's just getting started with Brock Purdy, the two of them have really good chemistry and Brock's still making minimum wage. Now you trade him? No. Structure the extension in such a way that you can maybe trade him in 2-3 years. Fine. But not now. That would be such a disaster. I don't think they will.
I don't think so either. Here's what does worry me though, Grant. I think every time a receiver gets signed, it pushes it closer to him being traded, right? Because his money's going up.
Didn't help
at all. That did not help. If Jefferson somehow gets a deal early before this draft and gets like 31 million, which is probably where he's going to be, that's not going to help either. Not that Ayuk's going to go over that, but it means that 28 million is more likely. And also, a lot of people found comfort in the fact that the rumor came out that Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers were going to work on an extension right after free agency. I actually looked at it the opposite way because the 49ers tend to wait on their contracts. So if they're trying to enter negotiations right after free agency, that tells me they're probably trying to gauge what the dollar amount is. What is the floor for Brandon Aiyuk? And if they feel like it's too high, they'll move on from him just like they did Buckner. And I think that's where the worry comes in.
The market could
Now,
price them out.
Right. Yes,
No.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now,
Because the wide
I do
receiver
want to say
market is
this.
crazy. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. But I want to say this, and this is what gives me room for pause when it comes to them trading Brandon Aiyuk, because they have said some great things about him recently. Kyle Shanahan, when he was asked about him, said, I know he's someone that we want here for a long time. And when John Lynch was asked about him, he said, we want him to be a Niner for a long time. He's an excellent football player. He's an excellent human being, and he's an excellent leader.
Mhm.
And that made me feel good. But then I realized those were not quotes about Brandon Aiyuk. Those were quotes about Buckner
About
right before they traded him.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And when you say we want this dude here for a long time, that's kind of code for saying, does he want to be here? We want him here.
Exactly.
But does he want to be here? Because if he wants to be here, then he's going to have to work with us. But if he wants every single penny he can get on the open market, then that's what he wants to do. That means he doesn't necessarily have to be here. He wants to go wherever he can get his number. And if Brandon Aiyuk has a number in mind and won't budge off of it, that's sort of what that means. I mean, I don't think they're going to give him $28 million a year. And if he feels he can get it somewhere else, they might be at an impasse.
And that's what I think they're going to try to figure out right as the free agency period kind of kicks off, because they need to know if this is something that they can get done at a price point that they think he's worth. And if not, you can't trade him after. You're not going to let him play out this 5th-year deal. You're going to have to sign him, or you're going to have to trade him.
I would hate it though, because you'd be trading him because you couldn't trade Deebo. It's like, oh well, we're already spending $28 million on this wide receiver over here, and we have to give him a bunch of targets. We don't have that many targets for Brandon Aiyuk, and he is great, but we can't. It's like, well, that's your fault. So you're trading a better, younger wide receiver because you messed up and gave that guy a bunch of money, and it's like, well, this is easier financially. Like, that's weak. I don't know, man. Maybe some Niner fans, well, football fans in general, can sort of do the mental gymnastics to support whatever a team does, especially when they're successful. But a lot of Niner fans, I think, would be really upset if this went down. Aiyuk. I mean, I'm giving away a signed Aiyuk jersey. Someone's going to be really invested in this guy.
Could you imagine? Maybe that's why people aren't entering. They're like, I don't know. Is he going to be here? I don't know. Really
Should
weird.
I really waste $10 on this? I don't know.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If you had to put your most prized possession on this bet, and one of them for sure was going to be gone, you just didn't know which one. The 49ers were either going to outright cut Juszczyk or trade Brandon Aiyuk. What would you put your bet on?
Trade Aiyuk.
I would too.
He's just not in the inner circle like they say he is. He's not. And that's why we keep coming back. Because you know who else was it? Buckner. He wasn't. You know why? Because he stood on business. I wanted to say it again, and I did. Aiyuk stands on business too. Not sure how or what that means, but I really have a strong feeling that Brandon Aiyuk is standing on business right now. I think the Niners have a problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like he's a bit of an outsider for whatever reason. I don't know what.
Some people are just outsiders by nature.
Yeah.
Like that. The book, The Outsiders.
Look,
they were all
right.
Outsiders.
He also was recently doing a live with Jaden Daniels again, who is a good friend of his, who is projected to go
Daniels
to the
in the
Raiders.
locker room after they won the NFC Championship game? Did I not see him in there? He was.
Yeah, he was.
Right?
He was.
I was like, hey, that's Jaden Daniels. Hey, how about that? You're the Niners?
That's why the whole him to go into the Raiders thing came out, was because of that. Because him and Jaden Daniels are friends and they expect Jaden Daniels to end up there. So that's why his brother was like, oh, get him to Vegas or something. It's like, why would he go to Vegas? Well, that's why.
Brandon, you have no idea what's going to happen to you. It's going to be a very
stressful. Rough.
It's going to be a very stressful few months. And I thought it was funny. Deebo Samuel was on the Kay Adams show and said, don't worry, I got this. I'm talking to him. Deebo, the guy who requested a trade.
I mean,
damn. It's bad news.
Deebo just went through it though, so maybe in hindsight he's looking back on it as like, you know what, it wasn't worth all that.
I overreacted.
Yeah. If I would have just known I was going to get paid anyways, I probably would have chilled out a little bit. And so maybe he's talking to Brandon Aiyuk about it as well. I don't have a problem with that, actually. I know that it seems weird, but Deebo's a couple years older, and I don't mind that he wants to kind of step in and be a leader here and just like, hey, don't get stressed, man. It'll get taken care of. They're going to say a lot of terrible shit about you. You got to be prepared for that. It's not personal. They said it about me too. And I still got 24 a year. You'll be fine.
So all I know is bringing it back before we leave this topic to Buckner. He wanted $21 million a year annually. It meant, I think, a lot to his ego, pride, whatever, self-esteem to be over that $20 million a year mark. It meant a lot to him, and he got it. And I think it meant a lot to the Niners to not go over that mark for him or any defensive tackle not named Aaron Donald or Chris Jones at the time. This was 4 years ago. So they drew a line. They're like, we're not doing that. You want 21, we'll offer you 18. And it doesn't seem like a big gap, but it was enough for the Niners to move on. What's the gap between Brandon Aiyuk and the Niners? I was talking about this with Tom Jensen the other day. Like, if Evans got 26, then Aiyuk could conceivably ask for 27 or 28. And the Niners might say, we'll offer you 24, what we offered, or 25. If they're apart $3 million a year, that was enough to break down the negotiations.
Here's the real question, though. Here's the real question, which is, who was the focal point in the Super Bowl? It wasn't Aiyuk, it was Deebo.
Yep.
And they're paying Deebo 24. So do they really think that Aiyuk is worth that much? I mean, are they going to come in at like 22?
Maybe not.
I mean, he's looking at it going, are you kidding me? Deebo got 24 2 years ago.
Call his number. Yeah. Like for his 6 targets a game, they're going to really give him $27 million. They don't use him like that.
His floor is 26. I'd be surprised at anything less than 26. Maybe I could see him going 25. Maybe if he just totally gives in. I don't think it's going to be less than 26. And whether it's the 49ers or another team, somebody's going to give him that money. So I expect that he's going to stay. I do. I'm not saying he's going to get traded. I'm certainly not advocating for him to get traded. But again, it comes down to it is the easiest trade to stomach for the 49ers because they clear the whole cap and they'll get a first-round pick.
It was kind of alarming that he didn't produce in the Super Bowl. He did produce in the NFC Championship game. And you chalk that up to just not getting the opportunities. But then you hear Dave Merritt, the Chiefs DB coach, come out and just roast Brandon Aiyuk and essentially said, like, you let your emotions take you out of the game, Brandon. And I think that's kind of interesting, like something I hadn't thought about with him because he does everything so well and he's so passionate and he goes to that dark place that Kyle Shanahan talks about that he likes players to go to, but you can get in his head. Good teams do. Chiefs did. So I don't know if that's something he outgrows or if that's a weakness in his game, like how Brock Purdy can't throw in the rain. But that kind of gives me pause. And I always my new paradigm is what would the Chiefs do? I think in the NFL, you should be thinking that way. What's the best team in the league? What would they do? Would the Chiefs extend Brandon Aiyuk?
They wouldn't have extended Deebo. So
no. So something to think about.
Yeah.
Why did the Niners have so much better injury luck last year? I mean, they've been top 12 in injuries like 10 years in a row, and they finally weren't. It seems like a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I don't have answers as to why they had better luck.
I want answers.
What I do want to talk about with this though, Grant, because I think this is important to bring up. So for the first time in 10 years, and shout out to Kyle Posey. He wrote an article on Niners Nation. You can check it out. I want to give credit where credit is due. He wrote that for the first time in 10 seasons, the 49ers rank above 20th in adjusted games lost in 2023. In 2022, the 49ers lost a combined 93.9 adjusted games. Or excuse me, in 2022, yeah. In 2023, they lost just 34.5. So 60 less games essentially lost from 2023 to 2022.
Wow.
I guess the overarching point is this happened for the first time in 10 years on an aging team. The
Yeah.
team's going to be 1 year older, and there's a
Yeah.
lot more mileage on a lot of those guys. Christian McCaffrey's one of them. George Kittle, for the first time in forever, didn't miss any games. This is one of the things that we talk about or should be talking more about when it comes to making a run at another Super Bowl. You just came off of a long year for this team, extra games for them, for a team that is aging. And now you're going to hope that they can stay healthy again next year. I don't know that that's realistic. And that's why getting young and especially getting depth is extremely important. That's why these rookies this year do have to contribute. And they're already starting off in the opposite direction of what they started off last year. You've got Greenlaw and Hufanga both coming off of major injuries. That's already worse than what you started out last year. So to expect that the 49ers just make it back to a Super Bowl and everything's going to fall into place because luck is a part of it, it's really hard for me to believe. It is. Being that this is the first time in just 10 years they were in the top 20. We're not even talking the upper half of the league or top 10. First time in 10 years they're in the top 20 for this stat. That's not good, man. That's a trend. That's more than a trend. That's a trend that preceded the Shanahan era. The likelihood is that they fall right back into that trend and they have way more games missed. And this year, they had 14 games missed on the offensive side of the ball, which was crucial for a young Brock Purdy. I don't know that you can count on that again. I don't. And that is really the ultimate thing that I want to talk about, because we're trying to figure out how do we fix the 49ers to make another Super Bowl run and potentially win it. This is one thing that we can't account for. And it's something that has to be a bit talked about and concerned. Actually, it's concerning for me.
Yeah, I mean, the last time they lost a Super Bowl, they had like the most injuries ever the next season and went 6-10. So there is something about losing the Super Bowl. There's like a physical toll it takes on you, an exhaustion, but also an emotional toll. And I think it's hard to quantify. It's not, you didn't just lose, but you lost in front of everyone. It's embarrassing. It shouldn't be. You lose the NFC Championship game, football fans saw you lose. You lose in the Super Bowl, it feels like the whole country saw you lose. And when you walk around town, everyone, casual fans, people that don't watch football, everyone knows you're the guys that lost in the Super Bowl. And the way the Niners lost was embarrassing too. And it's hard to galvanize around that. It seems like it's depressing. Last year, the way they lost, they were so adamant. It wasn't fair. It wasn't indicative. They should have won. And it fueled them all throughout the offseason until they played Philly and proved they were right. That was their Super Bowl straight up. But maybe that's why they had better luck with injuries, because they were so freaking driven all offseason, all year. They put in all the freaking work, didn't cut any corners, and still came up short. Now they're all talking about like, man, it's hard to get over this one. It's really hard to get over this one. Like, need to. You should have already.
Well, I think a few things too. When we talk about why that 2020 season was derailed, it was because of injuries, which is exactly what we're discussing here. Bosa was down, Jimmy went down, all the injuries they had. We also know that there were some big time players that played through some pretty big time injuries just to try to make this thing happen. And a lot of 49er fans and beat writers have talked about if Greenlaw had just played in the second half of that Super Bowl, they probably would have won. And maybe that's true, but he didn't because he got injured. And that's kind of what we're talking about for next year. So if you can't lose a Dre Greenlaw for a half and win the Super Bowl, well, you might have to start out the first half of the season without him. What does that do to your schedule and your record and your chances at getting the number 1 seed, which is going to be crucial for them? There's just a lot to think about when it comes to this.
Yeah. Other thing too, I mean, the big ones, the quarterback and the running back. The Niners have had such bad, I'm not even going to say luck, results keeping those two positions healthy throughout Kyle Shanahan's tenure here. And both Purdy and McCaffrey basically made it through last season unscathed. Can they do that again? Because not even about them, although McCaffrey does have a history and Brock has his history. Yeah, I mean, kind of about them too. Can they do that again? If not, then you're looking at potentially missing the playoffs, all that.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. And then looking at that article again, their 14 games missed essentially on the offensive side of the ball was second best in the league. So not only did they like buck the trend of not being in the top 20, they like blew way past it, going to number 2 in the league. Like that's just it's not realistic with guys like Kittle and Trent Williams and CMC on this team that are getting older.
Actually, I want to change what I just said. I said it all comes down to 13 and 23, them staying healthy. Actually, technically, McCaffrey could go down. They could still have a good running game. Purdy could go down, and maybe they'll have a backup like a Jake Browning who can keep the team afloat like Browning did for the Bengals. But if 71 goes down for an extended period of time, he's going to go down. He only plays about 14 games a year. But if he misses 5, 7, 9, this team is in trouble. I expect them to take an offensive tackle in the first round this year. They freaking better. But that guy's almost 36. I mean, you're just one extended Trent Williams injury away from being out. So yeah, precarious.
Yeah, and assuming they keep Deebo, I mean, he misses games every year too. I mean, he got hurt a bunch of. He was hurt again in the Super Bowl. Yeah, and fought through it. It's like,
Deebo Samuel is like the king of staying down for 10 minutes, and you think like, man, he's never going to play again. He's never going to play again.
He needs,
and he's back 3 plays later.
Yeah, it's like it's like Paul Pierce in the finals. You get the wheelchair out and everything, and then it's like I just had to take a dump. That was pretty good though, right?
I'm not the only person that's noticed that, right? When he's down, I'm always thinking he'll be back. He'll be back.
Yeah,
tough guy, a little scary. I understand, but he'll be back. Got some
he does stay down for a long time.
He does. I'm not judging. I mean, I don't even play football. Never wanted to. It's painful. Michael Jolly says trade Deebo, draft Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky. Watch his film. He's a younger Deebo with more pop.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about him.
I think Marco made that point on our show a few days ago. Dazza says if we trade BA, where's the offensive production coming from aside from CMC? Deebo is not great and Kittle is aging. Also, he's a willing blocker.
Yeah, no, BA, yeah, they've got to try to keep BA. Yes.
If they trade him, they can point to the Vikings, trading Stephon Diggs to the Bills and then using that pick to draft Justin Jefferson. Okay. So you better get Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Jesse Wade says BA's agent is John L. Best friend. Please learn from your previous mistakes. Niners, please don't let your homegrown dog go. John L. That's John Lynch. Is that true? They're best friends? That's good.
His agent, yeah, that's helpful.
Niners for life says is GM Peters a threat to the Niners in the draft?
I would think so. I mean, there's a lot of shared information. Yeah, for at least a year, the first year, I would say so, yeah.
Kurt Garrett says, did Buckner have a Deebo vouching for him publicly? No, he didn't.
I mean, he had Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch vouching for him publicly.
Dark Machoke says Kyle needs better route runners like Emmanuel Sanders. That would be better for Purdy too. Deebo can't get open. Kyle's been trying to find the next Emmanuel Sanders. Well, that's Aiyuk. They play the same position, but yeah they could use another.
Yeah, for sure.
Plumbing God 42 says, with Huff and Dre coming off injuries, my eyes have been set on James Williams, linebacker, strong safety from Miami. 6'5", 220 pounds, great open field tackler, hits hard, and would win most 50-50 balls with his size. Projected third rounder.
Well, I mean, that's what the 49ers do, right? They take converted safeties that are converted to linebacker and they turn them into superstars. So, I mean, there's a path there for success.
Thank you, Plumbing God, for being the Plumbing God. I have a question for you.
All right.
Is Brock Purdy the leader of the 49ers offense?
Ooh.
I mean, he's a Pro Bowl quarterback. Most of the time, teams with Pro Bowl quarterbacks are led by their quarterback.
Man, it's so tough to say, like, what is the beat of this team?
Yeah.
Like, who's the leader? Is it the guy who's the most outspoken when the mic's in front of his face? Is it the guy that kind of goes about his business quietly? Is it a guy that just happens to have a captain's patch? I mean, there's so much. I'm going to lean towards yes. And the reason that I'm going to do that is there's just one thing that I can't forget, which was his rookie year, the live television game after Seattle. He played through the hurt rib. Kittle comes out with his Jimmy Garoppolo t-shirt, his support of Jimmy Garoppolo. And you can just see right there that Brock Purdy's not dealing with George Kittle and his BS. He's not going to do it. Right there on national TV, he's like, yeah, this guy's obnoxious. And then you heard that he like told him to shut up in a huddle. I got to say yes. I mean, you've got to love that from a young player. I would imagine that that's probably amped up as this last year went. And I think it's probably going to progress as they go forward into the future. And I think that this team, in a lot of ways, when you hear guys like Trent Williams talk, they kind of acquiesce to the fact that, yeah, this is Brock's team. Like now, yes, we are the guys, but he's the guy. And we've got to kind of just work around that now. And we've got to trust that he can get us a ring. So I'm gonna lean with yes. I do think he's the leader.
I'm going to disagree. I think he should be the leader. I think he
Okay.
could be the leader. I think he
Okay.
has all the traits of a great leader. And I think one day he may be the leader. But I think the leader of the offense is Kyle Shanahan.
I was just gonna say
He
Kyle
won't
Shanahan.
give it up. It's his offense. And I think the next step for Kyle is for him to trust a quarterback enough, like a quarterback who would happen to be like the real deal, to say, you know what? It's his team. If he wants a certain play, he can call it. Patrick Mahomes, did he not call that play on 3rd and 15 against the Niners in the Super Bowl 4 years ago? It was his play, right? He can't. They had called timeout. I want to call wasp. Who trust you? I mean, it's time. You got to let Brock Purdy take over. He can do it. He's good enough, and he has the mentality. And if you don't, I think you're holding back the offense. It needs to be Brock's team, at least his offense.
That's a really, really good point. I mean, obviously, I was looking at it from a player standpoint and forgot about Kyle Shanahan. And you're right. I mean, Kyle, it seems pretty clear that after the Super Bowl, that some of the things that we thought were in place were still in place. Where it's like, hey, that third down when you had a clear option in Aiyuk on the slant right in front of your face, McDuffie's blitzing, Ayuk's right there. If you replace a blitzer with a receiver, you make that throw. He looked towards CMC because that's what Kyle told him to do.
Yeah.
So,
and you could hear him mic'd up. McCaffrey, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kyle needs to let go. You know who has let go? Andy Reid. That is Patrick Mahomes' offense, Patrick Mahomes' team, and that's a big reason why they've won. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl if you treat your quarterback like he's a joystick and you can tell him every little thing to do. Like Kyle doesn't even let Brock Purdy audible. Doesn't let any of his quarterbacks audible. What? Come on. Empower your guy. It's not Jimmy Garoppolo anymore. Only make the team better.
I mean, Purdy is the antithesis of Jimmy Garoppolo. They're polar opposites. Jimmy Garoppolo put off this aura that he just didn't care as much.
Yeah, I don't.
And football was not number one.
Necessarily do my homework, but it's cool because I didn't do my homework in high school either. Look how far I got.
Yeah. Jawline. But Purdy is the opposite of that. I mean, he just comes across like a tireless worker, and he loves this. He's doing this because he loves it. He feels like he has a purpose from God. This is what God wants him to do. So there's like something extra there for him. Why not give him those reins? And maybe they will. Maybe it's one of those things where Kyle's going to wait until they sign him and he fully I don't know. I hope that's the case. But for right now, Kyle's definitely calling the shots of that offense. Whoever, leader aside, who's calling the shots? Kyle Shanahan. And does Brock Purdy have the autonomy he probably has earned? No, he doesn't. So those are pretty factual at this point.
Like there was a video you sent me of Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek Hill was talking about it, how 2 years ago called up every single offensive weapon on the team and told him, held him accountable, said, you're not good enough here, not good enough there. And they all felt like, okay, You just took ownership of the team. Thank you. We want our quarterback to do that. You did it. I don't know that Brock's allowed to do that. Like, can Brock talk to Kyle Shanahan on the sideline during a game with the candor that Patrick Mahomes is allowed to talk to Andy Reid with? I don't think so. And I think until Kyle Shanahan treats his quarterback like a grown-up, they're going to be they're going to have a problem. You kind of treat your quarterback like a kid.
That's what will make the whole thing interesting, because if they pay Brock Purdy, and I think we all at this point assume they will, that's it. It's over for you, man. It's over for you.
I want to bring something up with that too. Great point. Everyone, this revisionist history that Kyle's going to get Kirk Cousins in 2018. That's why I didn't get Patrick Mahomes. Are we sure Kirk Cousins really wanted to play for Kyle Shanahan again? It's one thing to play for Kyle and say you like the experience when you're 24 and you're making $900,000 a year, and he's going to put money in your pocket. Yeah, I love playing for Kyle Shanahan, but then you get all the money. Do you really want to be talked to like that anymore? You know what I mean? Like, man, you're making twice what he's making. You're almost 30 years old. Like, do you need that in your life anymore? Or is that just going to give you anxiety? I wonder how much of a slam dunk that was, but that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, they did end up trading for Jimmy. But I mean, what we do know is that Kyle's extremely hard on his quarterbacks, and his dad was extremely hard on quarterbacks as well. Jake Plummer came out and talked about that. We've heard from RG3 and other notable publications have come out and talked about that as well. So
I think it's really interesting. Andy Reid comes from the Mike Holmgren tree. Kyle Shanahan comes from the Mike Shanahan tree. These are two of the best coaches in the league, and they're so different with how they deal with quarterbacks. With the Shanahans they want to sort of take their own quarterbacks down a peg. Hey, don't think that you're some superstar. It's our offense. Your job is to execute. You know what I'm saying? Execute the scheme. Whereas Andy Reid is all about sort of getting his quarterback to transcend it. Sort of hyping him up. Donovan, you're special. Patrick, you're special. This is your team. I mean, you transcend. I'm helping you. I'm in service of you. It's so the opposite. And again, I just prefer Andy Reid's style. To me, Kyle is just too controlling.
Well, Holmgren had Brett Favre. Yep. And look at, I mean, there's so many famous clips between the two of them. Yeah. There's so many famous clips between the two of them where it's like Holmgren would draw something up and he'd be on the sideline in the middle of a decision that Favre's making. He's like, no. Yes. And then he goes to him on the sidelines like, I didn't want you to throw it there. And Favre's like, yeah, I got the job done, right? He's like, yeah, you're right. Okay, we're good. Kyle would never. Kyle's the type of guy that the result would be awesome. And he'd be like, you didn't do it my way. There's a problem. It's like,
that's 100% correct. What would the Shanahans have done with Brett Favre? They would have hated him. They would not have developed him. You need a coach like Holmgren, Andy Reid to empower the guy. We want you to take over the team. We want you to be special. Different mentality. And Brock is the best quarterback Kyle's had. He's more gifted than Matt Ryan, in my opinion. He can move. He can do stuff that Kyle can't draw up. He can bail out Kyle. Man, empower this kid, please. Don't turn him into another robot. Don't.
Yeah, definitely not. And you look at guys like last year, I said CJ Stroud would kill in a Shanahan under Shanahan because of his accuracy and the way he plays on time, and that kind of proved out. But you look at a guy like Caleb Williams, who's like the consensus #1 quarterback this year. Although I don't see the superstar qualities that everybody else does, but that aside, Caleb Williams and Shanahan would be a disaster. Absolute disaster. That would never work. Ever work. So, and that's supposed to be the most talented guy in this draft.
Andy Reid could probably
for sure. Yes, Andy Reid would.
Kyle again would want to. He'd want to take Caleb Williams and shrink his ego.
Him. Yeah.
But Andy Reid would want to actually build his ego. Jim Harbaugh would want to. He took Colin Kaepernick's little ego and it took it times 100. Bill Walsh would do the same thing too. You are the man. Anyway, I gotta go. Mike drops with Monza. BA is not one of Kyle's friends. 27 million per. Sure, he's not. So Tinker says it's time to reset. Official BNA Music 88 says Bill's cutting everybody. That could be us soon. They got Parag. They know what they're doing. We need to see BP take the reins before he gets money. Okay, we got one more year for that. Official BNA Music 88 says Mike drove Plummer into becoming a cannabis enthusiast, we know what Beathard and Mullins will be when they are done. Hilarious.
Oof.
Kenyon Gim says, Fernando. And on that note, we're out. Jesse, tell the good people what's up next for you.
I'm actually taking the night off. Gonna hang out with
There
the
you
wife. You can go check out some of the content from earlier this week. Last Second Sports. Appreciate y'all. Peace.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back. Ivan, is Kyle the Jimmy G of coaches? Oh, Kyle, how's that feel? Do you like that? That's your fan. Sorry.
You like
No.
that? You like that?
You like that? See you guys.